I'm speaking on behalf for this weekend. I'd like to invite up one of our fellow friends here from Sandra from ACA, and she has just a couple things to say from her program. Thank you, guys.
Hi, everybody. Adventist Colleges Abroad, that's what ACA stands for. I am the General Director, and I am visiting your campus this week with a group of program directors coming from France, Italy, Argentina, and Brazil. Tonight, we have a meeting where we will show footage of all our programs, answer questions, give information, and we will also do a very special drawing for airfare assistance. That's a very special prize that we are giving out this year on our tour. The meeting is going to be tonight at 5:30 in Shawnee Porter Room, OC 116. So all the students, you are welcome to come and attend the meeting. I'm sure you have received, some of you have received our magazine or this passport. So come tonight and learn more about your study abroad options. Let's watch now a video about it.
Are you ready for the adventure?
Well, welcome to everyone in this special joint uBelong and Business Awareness Series. For our business students, there are sign-ins in the back. There's also snacks in the back. But let's start officially with a word of prayer. Let's pray. Father God, as we are talking about leadership today, I am so grateful for the example of leadership that you left us. Lord, thank you for the gifts that you've placed in the lives of each of these students here, for the gifts that you've given our panelists, and I just pray that your spirit will be here and that you will bless in this conversation. Amen. Amen. All right, well, I am very excited to welcome our panelists today. I was able to share time at Union College with all of them, so it's personal for me today as well. Unfortunately, Amanda Maggard's flight did not cooperate with her, so she's going to be here later in the day. But Gina Creek has stepped in, and I thank you for that. So let me just briefly introduce each one of them to you. We'll stay there. Okay. Penny Johnson is President and CEO of the AdventHealth Southwest region. Gina Creek, in the middle there, is currently the Regional Chief People Officer in Kansas City with AdventHealth, formerly the Executive Director of the Leadership Institute. And Sissel, I almost said Schleichner. Sissel Jacob is President and CEO of Manchester in Kentucky AdventHealth. So welcome, ladies, very much. And also, I just want to say how proud I am of each one of these ladies, both for the personal growth they've done over the years, as well as the impact they have on hundreds and thousands of lives because of their leadership. So join me in welcoming our panel. Okay. All right. Yeah. There you go. We can, you guys want me to swap? You got it? All right. Okay. Well, as we start out, if you ladies would each just briefly kind of talk about the path you took from Union, kind of what you took at Union, your path to where you are now.
Okay. I see everyone looking at me. Hi. I should say this is the second time I've been here since I graduated many years ago, and I kind of feel like that student jitters, because that's what I do here, right? I'm a student, so. So let's see, what I studied here is I did study business administration, and I was fortunate enough to receive an internship while a student at Union with AdventHealth. And really, I haven't looked back since. Internships, and then my very first job within AdventHealth was right after graduating from college. and that was many years ago. At this point, it's not really helpful to add up all those years because there's been enough of them now. So let's see, my journey then till now within my career, Lisa. Yes. I started off as AdventHealth's first supply chain management resident. And candidly, I didn't know what that meant when I accepted the job. I had to ask them, what is that? But I loved it. And I did supply chain exclusively for, probably 7-8 years before I started doing more and more within operations in the hospital. And just sort of grew my career from there, and then took on a strictly operations role at a corporate level, so overseeing some operational projects at the corporation side of things, and then found myself back in the hospital again with work on expanding the hospital and build a new expansion of the hospital, which was really a lot of fun, really fun to dream on big things. And then that took me to where I'm at today, which is, as Lisa said, President and CEO at AdventHealth Manchester, which is just a real joy and privilege.
So we're going from Sissel's really logical approach to her career to what I feel like is the most chaotic. Is this not working?
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, hi. Hi, I'm Gina. So I was a math education major at Union College. So any other math? We got a math major. Yes. Yes. You guys don't have to be in the basement of the building that doesn't exist anymore. So I was a math education major here at Union. And then my path sort of wandered from there. I worked here at Union College for Pastor Rich, for 2 years after I graduated. And then I went to Vermont and taught math because that's what I had my degree in. Then I was unemployed for 2 years while I went back to school and got my master's degree because all it took was 1 year of teaching math to say, no, thank you. And then I got my master's in organizational development. And during that time, I met and married my husband. And then he drugged me up to Michigan. And I taught math, obviously. So what else does one do in Berrien Springs, Michigan, but teach math? So I taught math there for 3 years. Then my husband drugged me down to Florida, and while he was working at the Florida Hospital Church as one of their pastors, I was begging and pleading for work of any kind. Otherwise, I would have to go back to teaching math. And so here's something. I emailed somebody who used to be a friend of mine at Union College because I had thought that I had heard that she was maybe working for AdventHealth somewhere. So I emailed her and said, hey, could you help me? I just applied for this job at AdventHealth. And she said, oh, the recruiter. She and I worked together the very first year. And lo and behold, I got my first job in AdventHealth working in our IT project management office. And then from there, I transitioned into leadership development over into the corporate office, and I got to help establish our Leadership Institute. But for the last 9 months, I've been doing some of the most challenging and rewarding work, I think, of my career, which has been in the role of Chief People Officer. So my responsibilities include all of our HR function, our learning, our development. And I don't know if you've noticed, but we're kind of in what we call a workforce crisis right now. It's like the post-COVID new crisis is that there are just not enough folks who want to work, and that's even more acute in healthcare. So I've always said that the thing that has sparked the most passion in me is solving really, really complex problems. That's why I loved math. That's why I love leadership. And frankly, I have found myself sitting in a chair where I am solving problems that none of us yet know how to fix. And I am kind of loving that struggle just to try to figure out what are all the different ways that we can think about this. So that's what I've been doing the last 9 months.
I'm sorry. So Gina just casually said that she created the Leadership Institute, like that was no big deal. So Lisa, note to self, just bring that up later.
Okay. All right.
So, Lisa, I thought it was interesting. Lisa and I graduated together. So, smartest person in our class, absolutely. But I think it was really interesting listening to these ladies who are like a decade younger than us talk about all the years it has been. It was like they were talking about, these chairs were in this room. I was like, this room didn't exist when I went to school here. It was shelf space. Yeah, it wasn't even built out. So I am Penny Johnson. I was Penny Roberts when I had the honor of living in Reese Hall. I graduated in 1992 with an accounting degree. And I did not get picked for the AdventHealth residency. I do not have a chip on my shoulder about it. Actually, I really I have a huge, no, I really don't. But I did. I was in my senior year. It was the Florida Hospital residency then. And I was like, I interviewed for it. I just thought that's what I was going to get, and I didn't get it. And so I graduated, and I had no job. Like, I have worked since I was 12 years old. I mean, I delivered papers. I worked at McDonald's. I mean, I've always worked. I'm like, I have no job. So I moved back home to Topeka, Kansas, and some people called me. I went to Academy with their son, and they had this is, you guys are going to die, really. But when you go to the mall, does anybody ever go to the mall? Nobody? See this? Okay, you guys don't go to the mall. You only shop online. So there's these things called malls, and they have stores in them. Sometimes they're indoor, sometimes they're outdoor. And in the middle of these malls, they have like these carts, right? And they're always trying to sell you something, right? Well, I actually did this for 9 months. I sold hair at a kiosk in a mall after paying for a Union College education. Woohoo, right? Yeah. Did that for about 9 months. Had health insurance, that was great, but I was like, that is not my gig. And so I got a job with a manufacturing agent. Actually, before that, I worked at a radio station as a receptionist, and I would make commercials. And then I found a job with a manufacturing company that made margarita machines. So virgin margarita machines, just so we're clear. I know they never put anything in there that wasn't, Ellen G. White approved. But so I did that, and I did accounting, and it was a really small family-owned business. And then after I kind of mastered that, they let me go and do the purchasing, which was so cool. I'm like buying steel and things, and 20 years later, that would serve me really well to understand that service line. And I happened to be here in May of 1995 for Cherie Jones and Jim Scriven, one of my dearest, closest friends, her wedding. And a friend of ours from California was here, and she was working out in Loma Linda. She's like, I need an accounting manager. Come work for me. And I'm like, okay, I'll go to California. So I moved to California 2 weeks later. And I worked at, and I'm telling you all these details because I think it's really important to understand that a circuitous route to get someplace is okay sometimes. So I went to Loma Linda. I worked at this laundry, and it was a commercial laundry for healthcare. Loma Linda and AdventHealth West owned it. And then I'm there 6 months, and they decide to sell it. And I'm like, really? But I had gotten to know the CFO of Loma Linda, amazing woman named Terry Dade. And she said, if you stay on and handle the business of closing this out, I'll create a job for you at Loma Linda. And so I did that. She honored that word. I started. I eventually moved back to Kansas to marry my husband, and went to work for a for-profit healthcare company. I wanted to work at Shawnee Mission. Here's another funny thing. I sent an email, or no, I actually think I called her, to a lady who was the controller at the time at Shawnee Mission Medical Center. And she wouldn't return my phone calls. And I'm like, wow. And I'm like, I was really qualified to work there. What's funny is she now works in AdventHealth. We joke about it all the time. I'm going to say this, it's going to sound bad, but my career eventually surpassed her, not necessarily because I was better than her or anything. Maybe it's because of want. But another life lesson there is, number one, always be nice to everyone. But number two, where you start is not where you end up, right? So I started working at Shawnee Mission, and I was only working part-time because I just had a child, and I really didn't have aspirations to be a CFO or a CEO, and I kind of was working on being a trophy wife, really. I was just waiting for my husband to make more money, right? And AdventHealth then took over Shawnee Mission, and I was surrounded by so many. Am I going super long? It's a super long. Okay. I'm almost there. But I was surrounded by so many super smart people, and it made me want to be better, right? And I learned so much from them. Brent Snyder, these are names, if you've ever been around AdventHealth, you'll know. They call him the legend, he's so smart. Terry Shaw was serving in a different role then. Paul Rathbun, and they just made me super curious. So I ended up being the assistant vice president of finance there, left, went to be the CFO of our hospital in Killeen, Texas. Was there 4 years, then had the opportunity to go to Fort Worth and be the regional chief financial officer over that Texas area, and then was asked to go to the corporate office in 2016 and be the senior VP of finance. Really didn't see that on my radar. I loved being out in the market, but I learned about the whole company. I got to make a lot of new relationships, and thought that's where I would end my career. And then in 2020, Randy Hafner said, would you like to go be the regional CEO for Texas? And I'm like, well, I'm not a CEO, I'm a finance person, right? He's like, no, we want you to go lead that region. And I did that, and it's been an amazing blessing. And, you know, if this is the last job I have, it's going to be more than I ever dreamed when I was sitting across the hall in classes. And if God calls me somewhere else, then I'll do that too. But
Penny, we should all tell our stories of when we got rejected across AdventHealth, because I remember when I was moving from Michigan to Florida, I knew about a month ahead of time that's where we were going, and I started applying for every job I could think of that my skills might stretch into. I even think I had some friends who were trying to get me connected with the person who was running the residency program at the time. And I wrote him emails, I wrote him letters, and he wrote me back and was like, we don't have anything, and also your resume, and also eventually I ended up working directly for him, and then he left the organization and I got his job. So it's just so interesting, the number of times we get rejected, and then the perseverance, and yeah.
There. All right. Do you have any? Well, yeah, I would just say to that, I mean, patience, because you just don't know sometimes why that door closes, and it can just be really, really frustrating. And here you had it all mapped up out in your head, and you're expecting that yes, and you're even making plans for that new job or that next step or the next class, even whatever, just fill in the blank. And I really had to learn to be okay and say, all right, Lord, like, you know, I'm trying to follow and walk where you're leading me. So not sure why that door closed. Don't know why they didn't even want to interview me, even though in my perspective, I'm ready. What'd you say?
I don't know.
Right. But I'm going to keep forward, and I'm going to be patient, and I'm going to take advantage of every situation and person that I've met. Because that's one thing you just don't know is the relationships, the people that you met, how it's going to come back around, or the experiences, or maybe the projects that come your way. And here at Union, I know that there was just several things. I didn't know why I volunteered to do that, or I don't know why I agreed to do that job, and how much I learned just from saying yes.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all for sharing very different paths that you took to a top leadership role. Which of your transitions would you say was the most challenging, and what made it so difficult?
I can answer that one. It's my most recent one. So I went back to Texas, and so what I get to do, it's such a pleasure and honor, and exceeds my wildest expectations. But we have 4 hospitals in Texas. 3 of them have their own CEOs. They report to me, and then I get to serve as the CEO of Texas Health Huguley and the region. And I took that job on February 1 of 2020. Anybody remember what happened at the end of February 2020? And so, you know, I already knew. I know, right? I knew it was going to be a change. To go from being a CFO to being a CEO is a huge change. And you'll get this someday, but you'll think your boss will have a job, Robert. And I used to think, well, the CEO job's really not that hard. I mean, they just sit there and tell us what to do and give us all the work, right? It is really hard. And to do that in a pandemic when I already felt like I had a learning curve. But I think God gives you, so here's a great example. I am by nature a firefighter, a troubleshooter, a problem solver. And so actually COVID was a little bit easier for me than thinking big picture, where are we going to be in 5 to 7 years? I can do that, but it's not my natural. And so, but definitely this latest one has been the hardest transition.
I think I would answer that as my first managerial job, when I actually had a team to manage. So I had just exited the residency program, so learned about supply chain for 2 years, and they said, okay, we have a job for you, and you're going to be leading a team. And I'm like, all right, I'm ready. You know, I had all of Barry Forbes's management classes, and I loved all the books. I mean, loved the conversations, and I'm like, I'm ready for this. Like, let's do it. I'm excited. And I made every mistake you could possibly make with the team. Every mistake. And I just laugh and still kind of do that inner cringe when I think about some of the things that I did leading a team for the first time. I mean, in many ways, I was way over my head. And that's okay. I mean, that's okay. I mean, you become you learn really quick that making mistakes is all right. And I encourage you, guys, make a mistake every week, because that's how you're going to learn something. Take that risk. You're going to learn something. And wow, did I make a lot of mistakes.
So I think my hardest transition, like Penny, is into the job I have now. And the reason that is because the job I had before, leading the Leadership Institute, is what I think I had constructed just my whole vision of my life. Like back when I was here at Union College and I worked for Pastor Rich, he invested so much mentoring and leader development in me that I just sort of left here with that identity of, I'm going to help other leaders be better. I just want to make leaders better. And so that's what I got my master's in. I just finished getting a doctorate in leadership in organizations. And so leading the Leadership Institute felt to me like it was going to be my final job. I even said to my boss at the time, was Randy, I said, Randy, if I retire from this job, it'll be the best thing that's ever happened to me. So everything I had learned, everything I had striven for was to be in that role. And then I got a call from another person that graduated from Union. He called me up. His name is Sam Huguley, and he said, Gina, I want you to come and be my chief people officer. And I laughed out loud at his face.
And what Gina doesn't know is Sam was telling me he was going to make that call, and I was like, oh, darn, that was a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? Like, everybody thought it was a no-brainer.
Well, Sam called, except for me. He was like, Gina, I want you to be my chief people officer. And after I got my composure back, I said, Sam, I've never worked in HR a day in my life. HR was so far off of my radar. And I know that there are real technical deep skills and competencies that you need in order to lead this. And he had every answer for every doubt that I had. And he was like, Gina, we have got really strong HR leaders on each of our 4 hospital campuses. We have a whole corporate entity that knows HR. Your job isn't to be the expert. Your job is to help craft and coordinate the group of experts to take us where we need to go. And I'll tell you, there's no more vulnerable feeling, and I imagine Penny feels like this as well, but I'm really good at what I'm doing now. I wake up every day knowing that I am moving from a place of expertise, and there is comfort in that. Yep. And Sam was asking me to go into a place where I and everybody around me knows that I'm not the expert. And that is true, exposure. It feels really vulnerable. And guys, HR is technical no matter what field you're in, but HR in healthcare, there is a lot of scary cliffs that you could fall off if you don't know what you're doing. And so the role that I'm in now and the vast, fire hose drinking that I'm doing has been such a huge blessing, but it has been the most, I got an email yesterday where somebody forwarded me an email that they sent me my second week on the job, And all of a sudden, I know what they were trying to tell me 9 months ago. I'm like, I got this email, and I didn't even have enough understanding of my scope of responsibilities to be able to classify it correctly. So just to know, looking back, I'm like, man, Gina of June was really stupid, and Gina of now I don't mean that, but like, I was so clueless. And even in the 9 months that I've been there, it's like, oh wow, I've learned so much. I have so much more to learn. But what Sam told me, and what I am currently, I used to teach this to people, but now I'm actively walking through it. There are leadership leaps that you make that's going up in a straight line. But eventually your leadership is going to ask you to go diagonally or to reach more broadly. And that is going to be some of the biggest challenge that you face when you fully have to trust that the people around you are the experts, and your job is no longer to have the knowledge, to have the skills, to have the ability, but to help support and pour into the people who do, to make their lives easier and to remove their barriers. I'm getting a big dose of that now that I used to be really theoretical and sort of like nonchalant about, like how hard is the CEO job? Like, well, how hard is it to, take 2 leaps and go to left field and lead things that you don't know? But now I'm sitting in that space, and it is really, really challenging.
Something that, like, we just get to just sit up here and give you advice, and it's awesome, and you're like going, yeah, whatever, you guys are like ancient, but one thing I think we all have in common is be a utility player. So if you say, what is something actionable I can take out of this, is be a go-to person, be a utility player. So even back at Shawnee Mission, I was the controller, right? So my field was really accounting and finance. But the CFO would pull me into revenue cycle, into case management, and I think that's another thing that if you want to grow quickly is jump in where you can, be a utility player, and you're going to have a lot more opportunities come your way.
Right. I just realized that with the lights directly down here, I can't see the clock in the back, and I don't have a watch. 11 o'clock perfectly, about 20 minutes. Okay, so please signal me when we're getting close there. All right, so another question for you ladies. What do you consider the most important thing that you do as a leader, top leader, and what is the hardest part of your job, do you think?
What's really fun about this question is you're going to get 3 probably very different answers. There's actually a great book on that topic about what the role of a CEO is. And they discovered that we all approach it very differently, which is kind of what like Penny was alluding to earlier, is there's no real one path and there's no real direct line. Anyway, probably I would say is defining reality for my team. Making sure that everyone really truly understands what's happening, what's important, what are priorities, and continuing to be that voice to shed and keep focused on the bigger picture. Because right, life comes at you fast. Problems come up even faster, and it can be really easy to get drugged down into that moment by moment. We do our best to plan our days and to plan our years, and sometimes things don't work out as you anticipate. So yeah, I'd say defining reality.
Maybe this is just the fact that I sit in a different chair, but I'm going to riff off of that because I think mine is managing everybody's different definitions of reality. So I sit in a place where I have a regional CEO, similar to Penny, but for my region, and then I have 4 CEOs of the campuses, and each campus has a CFO, so 4 CFOs. And I don't see it as my job of getting that group to move in the direction because I'm in a support function. My job is to be a support to each of those CEOs, to each of those CFOs, CNOs, et cetera. And when I sit around the table, we often have these regional executive meetings where we're all trying to come together And there is a CEO in that room that's trying to define a singular reality or get us all to agree on what the highest priority, the most pressing problems are. And I happen to be the person who gets to be in a lot of hallway conversations, either before or after those meetings. And I feel like I get to be the confidant. You guys might all be too young for this, but are there any Star Trek fans? One. Cool. Cool. Now, okay, I saw a few other hands. There's people feeling like I didn't include them. Okay. So once upon a time, one of my bosses told me that he saw me as Counselor Troy. And if any of you have watched Star Trek, she is the one who just could sense everybody's emotions, who could just understand where the shifting sands were going. And I even feel like I do that today. So leading my team is really important, but gosh, I have really amazing, high caliber professionals that are running our HR function. So the work that I do assisting Sam and then partnering with all the executives to manage these different ways that they are shaping reality, the way they're defining the problems that are the most important to us, and me trying to help bring those together to say, okay, I can see it from your point of view, I can see it from your point of view, but what do we need to agree on in order to be pulling in the same direction? And that is some of the most fun but most challenging work that I do.
What was it, the hardest thing?
Most important thing and hardest thing.
I think the most important thing is just connecting with your executive team. For me, like just making sure where are they at in their journey? Are they up? Are they having a hard time? What can I do to make their lives easier? Just because they are doing the day-to-day work of running the hospitals, So I think that's probably the most important thing. I think the hardest thing, just to be vulnerable, is a couple things. It's like you don't create work product. You function at such a different level that sometimes finding your satisfaction, and nobody's telling you did a good job, right? I thrive on positive affirmation, I'm not going to lie. And thank you, Gina.
Great, Penny.
You know what I mean? But it's just like you have to, and you'll find this in your career, the farther up you go, at the end of the day, you have to go home and know that you've done your best and you've made a difference, and find that and know that what you're bringing to the table is experience and wisdom and guidance and strategy, but your work is not actual work product anymore.
Well, the next one I'm going to direct specifically to Penny and Sissel, and that is, how is the CEO role unique? And what surprised you the most when you transitioned into that?
I'll go because I was kind of leaning that way. And I forgot. I keep looking at Sissel. You should also know that Sissel's a thief. So she just stole one of my very favorite employees from my hospital. And I was like, when she was talking about her team, I was like, yeah, your team. I think that's my team. No, I just...
Okay, so Penny the last words Penny used to me before I saw her here was, I'm going to take you out back. And I managed to avoid her the rest of the time I saw her after she said that, and I need a buddy for the rest of the day.
I'm teasing. We really work to try and think about talent as the organization's talent, and I'm super excited about the gentleman getting an opportunity there. Another Union College grad, Jesse Cleven. He's going to go be her CFO. What's hard and what's unique, right? Was that the question?
Yeah. What's unique and what surprised you the most?
I think what's unique is it's kind of a lonely job. I sound pathetic right now, like today. No, it is. Even when you're a vice president, you have peers. And I think it's even a little more, AdventHealth, for those of you who know, is over 13 states or 11 states, I can't remember now, but there's lots of CEOs in Florida. And then if you're out in the multi-state like Sissel and I, you don't have peers. And so I can't walk into anyone's office and complain about anybody, right? Because they all, you just, that's someone that you can bounce off. And luckily, Sam Huguley and I worked together years and years ago. And so I have that. So I think what's important is you have to realize it's a little bit lonely, and to find a peer or someone that you have that kind of relationship with, that you can kind of just talk through the good days and the bad days. And I think what surprised me most, I remember this day very vividly, the first day I walked into my office now, and it was the most humbled I'd ever felt in my career. And I just walked in, I was like, wow, like you're charged with leading 3,000 or 4,000 people. Like, how are you going to do that? And it's not, and so I think people think that the CEO is glamorous, and it is. I mean, I'm not going to lie. People want to do nice things for you. They take you to nice things. You say, oh, I wish there was M&Ms. M&Ms miraculously appear. It's so awesome. But it is the most humble job, at least that's the way I feel like you should view it, is because you're really there to serve others and trying to think about that every day.
I mean, Penny, we're really standing on other people's shoulders. Very well. Things that, structures, people, programs, teams that other people built before you. So like Penny is saying, I mean, what a humbling experience to say, okay, now it's your turn to lead and pick up the work. Me? Like, I actually have the final say. So I think maybe that ties into a little bit of my surprise. So I knew that my words were going to be important, but I'm a highly collaborative leader. And so sometimes, right, you think out loud with your words. And so, you use the words, hey, what about? And then I thought it was a what about statement. I turn around and they did it. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, no. Oh, okay, well, good. I like it. I was just dreaming with you for a minute and didn't know you were going to execute that. So that was a little bit of a surprise that I'm having to be even more choosy and careful with the words. And I just really deeply resonate with what Penny said. So then it can be very lonely, because then sometimes you can't really express sometimes what you're thinking. Yeah.
Can I add to that? Because I do. I think you hit on something, was the power of your words. And it's super important as a CEO. But I would say that my word for the year is encourage. And I've really been trying to build on that, because your words right now, you can make someone's day, their week, you could make someone's life different, and so I really like that you brought that up, Sissel, because I do think as you move in positions of authority, you can just ruin someone's day. I put something on LinkedIn, which I rarely do, but give me some points. It's a big AdventHealth initiative, so if you follow any of us on LinkedIn. But it said that for 70% of people, their boss has the most impact on their mental health. Wow. So to me, and it's true, my husband and I were talking about it, he's like, well, I've known that your whole career. So I think that's really well said, Sissel, about the power of words.
And then the weight and responsibility that comes with that. Yeah, it can be very heavy at times.
So I just wanted to step back to something you said, to put a pin in that later. What were you thinking about with Gina's starting the Leadership Institute? Was there a question that popped in your mind?
She glossed over it, but one thing that I can say is, find an organization that wants to build you up and wants to invest in you. And so I feel very fortunate that I found that organization from a really young age. And I see, Tanya nodding. I mean, it goes a really long way to have an organization that values growth. And so AdventHealth realized that years ago and started dreaming on it. And right, a lot of dreams require dollars. And so Gina was given dollars to build something. So I just feel like I would love to hear Gina's journey to have an idea and then take it to where it is today.
Well, to be fair, the idea, I think, predated me. In fact, our last CEO of AdventHealth, he's now passed away, Don Jernigan, lived an example of what it means to invest in the people around you. And I remember as he was getting closer and closer to retirement, as happens with all folks in that same season of life, he was asked a lot about the legacy that he wanted to leave. And he always came back to, I want to leave a legacy where AdventHealth knows and invests in their own leaders, from early career all the way through to the top echelons of the organization. So when he retired, he was the founding member of the Leadership Institute. And for a season, it was really centered on him, capturing his legacy. He started doing a lot of coaching and mentoring and other things. I got the privilege of being in some of the rooms because I was, at the time, over the residency program. I was doing leadership development. So I got to be in some of the planning rooms where he and myself and other sort of big names in AdventHealth history were talking about what could the Leadership Institute be? If we want to build it beyond Dawn, and in Dawn's spirit, what might it become? So you combine that with the CEO that took over, who's our CEO today, Terry Shaw, another man of God who says, our best leaders are going to be leaders who we grow from within the organization. And so he formed the steering committee of the Leadership Institute. And when I got to take over the Leadership Institute, it was, let's dream dreams about what we're going to become. We built out a portion of our headquarters building, transformed it from, it used to be cubicles and offices. We stripped it out and we turned it into a learning center that has Leadership Institute inscribed on the walls. There's a team now of close to 25 people that didn't exist before. We have programs that go from, those of you, there's probably people in this room who are going to be interns this coming summer. That's a product of the Leadership Institute. But we also have executive leadership programs, coaching, mentoring, and the like. And it's become, in the 5 years the Leadership Institute has existed, it has become one of the organization's pillars. I like to, I might be a little bit self-serving in this, but I like to think of it as a crown jewel of AdventHealth, because it, in such a short time, has become something that helps to expand our influence, helps to reinforce our culture that is centered on our mission. We know really clearly that we can't just go to some other well-known leadership like Center for Creative Leadership or Harvard or other places to get the kind of leaders that AdventHealth needs to carry it into the future. And that's the premise on which the Leadership Institute was based. I'm really, really proud of the work that is going on there. All of us on the stage have participated either as faculty member in things that the Leadership Institute is doing or graduated from programs of the Leadership Institute, and we've seen firsthand the transformative nature of bringing people together and investing in them as leaders, and it's been awesome.
Okay. Probably, Lisa, the reason why I had that close to my heart and wanted Gina to talk a little bit about that is I'm uncomfortable sitting on this stage because I'm not here for many ways for what I did. It's not about me. It's other people investing in me, other people believing in me, the organization believing in me and giving me the opportunity to learn and stretch and grow. Mm-hmm. And I just really wanted to make sure you all heard that really loud and clear, that we're all works in progress here. Mm-hmm. And we've been really fortunate to have people believe in us. So find your crew, find people that believe in you too.
All righty. Yeah, so do we have time for one more question, or are we out of time? We have 5 minutes. Perfect. Okay. So the last question that I would like to wrap up with is, what would you tell your college self?
Be patient. It's going to be okay.
I would say just calm down. The Union College version of Gina was really high intensity, and I think that's great. Like I hope that my intensity has found more focus and not necessarily dimmed, but I was the intensity sometimes wrapped in on itself, that I had to make all the right decisions, that I had to figure things out, that I had to get married before I left. Spoiler, I didn't, right? Like, you graduated, it's fine. That life goes on after college, and frankly, who you think you are or who you've Like the layers of self that you start to reveal while you're here they're so important, but it's just the beginning. You're going to continue to find out things about who God made you to be, who God is calling you to be. And frankly, there will come a point in time where you feel that calling that is beyond the shadow of what you believe you can do. And when I was here, I always felt like, well, I'm getting ready for what I know God's going to call me to do. Like I was preemptive about it. And now I'm sitting squarely in a space where I would never have imagined ever in my life being called to, being challenged by, being gifted with the weight of leadership to the degree that he has placed me in this moment in time. So I would tell myself, calm down, save some of that energy for when it gets really hard later, and then just hold on and trust in God.
You know, I think I don't know if you feel this way. I don't know. The older you get, I think the less you want to change. Do you know what I mean? Like I could sit there and I could say, oh, Penny, don't switch schools back and forth, or don't do this. But all of that got me to where I am now. So I don't think I would change anything. I think what I would say is just be happy with your journey. And I think that's it. Like, and don't compare it to anybody else's. You know,
and don't be embarrassed by it, right? Just because it was different, it's beautiful.
Yeah. You know, I tell people all the time, you can change your mind. You can make a decision. I mean, it is part of the journey. And so I think embrace it right now. I have a daughter in college. I have a son who recently graduated. And I know it's really easy for us to sit up here, and you're probably thinking that too. It's what my daughter always says to me. She's like, yeah, easy for you to say. It is. But what you're going through now is going to be so important to the person Christ is making you. So.
Well, thank you all so much for sharing your wisdom and insights with us today. Thank you all for joining us. Have a blessed day, and we'll see you later.
Thank you for the therapy session.
Thank you. All right, blessings.